I started my fourth kid while helping get two businesses off the ground and advising for three others. And it's been the hardest season of my life. Here are four surprising lessons that I've learned in this season that helped me become better entrepreneurs that I want to pass to you so that you can learn from my pain. Welcome to the Parentreneur podcast. I'm Jay Keynes, your host, where we explore balancing parenthood and entrepreneurship. I have nothing to sell you, by the way. All that I ask is that you participate in this community so we can help one another. So that includes, liking the video, subscribing, comment. Tell me what your problem is within your business, and I'll help you and comment to any comments that you have. Even maybe make a video and feature you on it as well. So a brief background about me. I spent most of my time in startups and growing businesses until after four layoffs in 2.5 years, I started my own company last year, a software development company for other businesses. What does that mean? I build software for other businesses. Now, it's been the hardest season. Again, personally, it's been the hardest season for me, business-wise, navigating three kids plus a fourth who's an infant and balancing everything. I'm doing 14, 15-hour days of, sun up to sundown, helping the kids, helping the family, and trying to fit business in between. But I really believe that it's in these hard moments when either businesses sink or swim. And I think that you can survive most hardships if you focus on these areas that I'm mentioning. And I hope that it can potentially save you years of hurt. So the first lesson is manage your expectations appropriately. If you think at all that you'll be able to maintain any kind of similar schedule before you had a child, it's just insane. You're going to be frustrated, you're going to be angry, and it's going to come out in really ugly ways if you don't temper it. And I'm speaking to myself here and just being fully transparent. Have I been the most present parent? No. Have I been the most patient person? No. Have I been the most Christ-like individual? No. I've been exhausted, and I don't like the person that I have been in these really hard moments. And I think a big part of that is just managing expectations. I should have known it was hard. I should have known that it would have taken more time to recover. I should have known that this was going to be a harder process, but I was naive. And I would say just don't be naive going into this hard season. You won't be able to be a present parent working full time, starting a business, exercising daily, having a thriving social life, having plenty of time to spend with your spouse. It's just not going to happen. So instead, what it took for me to see is you have to view it as trading off something. Instead of saying, I don't get to do this or I can't do this anymore, it's more of trading. It's I'm choosing this in exchange for this. And if you're a person who's going into a harder season and you're starting a business or you're running a business, what can you trade? Because I know that the average American consumes 4.5 hours of Netflix a day. That's 31 and a half hours a week. That's almost a full-time job. If you just didn't watch Netflix and you instead just spent it all on your business. So something has to give. You have to exchange something. For me, it's been YouTube, as you can see, as I haven't posted in a few months, and fitness. Ashamed to say, I'm a person who's consistently works out 2 to 6 times a week, and I'm hardly hitting once or twice a week at all. It's even taken me 4 times to record this one video. Weeks I've been trying to get to this. And I have children yelling in the background and an infant crying, which I hope you can't hear with the software that I use. But it's hard. It's really hard. But it's a season. And that's why I'm saying it doesn't have to be forever, these trade-offs that you have when you're managing expectations. But you just have to go, you know what? I'm going to give up Netflix or hang out with the guys or whatever for the next 3 months as I get this thing off the ground. And recognize that this season, it's going to be hard. But it's going to be worth it if you really, truly value that thing. The next thing around kind of the same vein of managing expectations, you have to understand in lesson 2 that there's a difference between hard and impossible. There's a critical difference between something being hard and being impossible. And it's a really important mindset shift, even though it sounds pedantic to talk about, because labeling something as impossible gives us permission not to try. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, for anyone who's out there who might be listening who hasn't started a business, but you always wanted to, if I say you need to start a business next week, just life or death, start a business next week, what do you think? You think, well, I can't, or that's impossible, right? You're saying the same things and saying I can't and impossible. You're saying that's impossible for me to do. But if you're someone who thinks it's impossible to start a business in different seasons of life, just stop now, because you won't be able to do anything. You won't start anything. Because I hate to tell you this, it's always going to be hard. It's always going to be hard. It's always going to feel impossible. But until you intentionally shift that mindset to it's hard, it's not impossible, recognizing what hard is, for one, just kind of relieves the pressure a little bit to say, yeah, this is a hard season. Also recognizing hard versus impossible allows you to see, okay, it's hard, which means it's possible, which means that I can figure it out. And if I can figure it out, I need to find the opportunities where I can make this work. Recognizing hard allows us to find opportunities where we can make that thing work. Off the same vein of understanding hard versus impossible is the third lesson. I believe you get immense clarity through limitations. And here's an example. It wasn't until I could only spend 30 minutes to an hour or two on my business in the first 4 weeks of my infant being born that I began to realize like most of my day, even though I'm a person who's pretty distraction free, is spent or was spent before having the baby on just a bunch of different things that really didn't matter. It kept me busy and made me feel like I was moving forward in different areas. But whether it be YouTube or books or just things that just aren't relevant to the two most important things in your business. How do I get more clients and how do I fulfill those clients? That's it. And once I had a to-do list that could only be one or two things, it really forced me to conceptualize what will move my business forward. What is the one thing that'll move my business forward right now that I can affect? And so for me, it was looking at, closing deals. Closing and moving forward deals is the most important thing to me right now. And then building my marketing machine. So I'm trying to build a sustainable marketing machine that's not relying on me picking up a phone or me knocking on a door, but that I can create a lead gen system that brings people to me who I can nurture, who eventually, when the time is right, I can sell to. And that's my number one focus now. After having the baby, is beginning to realize that my to-do list was one or two things, and now I'm just spending all my time on that one thing. So for me, it's optimizing ads and thinking through ads that we're running and refining those and getting them better, to also the cold email that I'm running. So the outbound campaigns. How do we scale up more? How do we get better? How do we get more positive responses? I'm just hyper focused on those things, and I eliminate everything else that isn't related to me improving those two areas of my business. So the question I ask for you similarly is, if you only had an hour, what would be the one thing that you would work on? Again, I imagine it's around either sales or fulfillment. What would be the one thing you'd be working on? And the question I'd ask you when it comes to your mind is, how can you do like 3 or 4x of that? So instead of 20% of your day being that, how can you flip it to where 80% of your day is that? Because I think that's the meat and potatoes of the business, is really defining what will move forward our business the most, and then just doing more of that. I think so oftentimes we allow ourselves to get busy with just busy work and things that really don't matter, or that could be automated, or that could be pushed off to a cheap virtual assistant that'll allow us to have free time to really focus on what moves the business forward. So I suggest do a time audit. Write down everything you've done throughout the week and define what is the actual things that have moved your business forward and grown your business. And then challenge yourself for the next week to do 3x of that thing, to book your calendar, to do 4 to 6 hours of that one thing every day. And lastly, lesson 4, I believe that constraints create a superpower in business. But what do I mean by that? Well, they say that necessity is the mother of all invention. And I think that constraint is the mother of all business growth and scale. Constraints force you to create a more independent business. And if you can create a more robust, independent business, it doesn't require you to show up and be there to grow. It's easier to scale once you find something that can actually be scaled. And it actually has more intellectual property within it if you create an independent business that's not just fully dependent on one person, meaning that it has more enterprise value. It's worth buying, is what that means. Let's say, for the sake of an example, there's 2 entrepreneurs. They run the same business, right? A B2B service business. There's one guy, he's a boomer. He's kind of old school. He just kind of picks up the phone. He calls people. He runs to these meetings. He goes to lunch. He fulfills the service. He does everything. He's been around in the game for 20 years, right? And he's ran business the same exact way. Old school handshake. He does well for himself, right? But then there's entrepreneur 2. Let's say he's a little bit younger and he's a little bit more tech oriented. And maybe he's had a baby as well, right? So he only has a few hours to work on his business every week, but he still needs to fulfill the same kind of B2B service. Well, what is he going to do? He's going to create more sustainable methods within every facet of his business, from how things come in for sales and how things flow out for fulfillment. So under the entrepreneur 2, he might figure out LinkedIn or Facebook ads to target a specific demographic that leads to some kind of free giveaway, something free of value that solves a little pain that leads up to the bigger pain of the big sale, right? So the ad leads them to a VSL, which is a virtual sales letter. The virtual sales letter sells them on the free or maybe the inexpensive package that they can purchase. And then that within the service, once they get through it and get value at the end, within it has an offer for the bigger service, right? The 5-figure offer, to where then a virtual assistant or a salesperson just has to go in and call those people and book them up for a closing session with the owner, or maybe just does it by himself, right? It's just to show you that I've worked with many different boring businesses and service businesses and construction businesses. And while this example might seem silly, it rings true. I've seen many businesses in the same industry, like construction, where, they've been around for 40, 50 years, and, they still run a small crew. They've grown and they're a 7-figure business, but then someone else shows up on the spot who is tech oriented, who's focusing on automation, who's focused on delegation, who's focused on standardizing and building an independent business, and is much more intentional. And then that business just grows, has hockey stick growth, and surpasses that person who's been around for 50 years within just a few years. Why is that? Is because it's a different mindset to have when you create a business that is more independent, that is more robust, instead of being focused on just one person to lead. 4 lessons are, really manage your expectations. You have to understand the difference between hard and impossible to find the opportunities, because I believe that constraints are your superpowers, right? There's clarity through limitations, and those opportunities of limited time frame would really allow you to show you what needs to be prioritized, and then therefore allows you to show through your constraints what are some ways that you can scale and get creative that allows you to create a business that serves you instead of you serving your business. Now, again, these lessons aren't just for parents, but I'm hoping that if you're a parent out there who's running a business or trying to start a business, that you get some value out of this. And so I'd ask the parents out there who are running or starting businesses, what's the biggest constraint that you're seeing in your business today? Again, my name is Jake Haynes, host of the Parentreneur podcast. Thanks for watching.